Hello and welcome back to the Daily Rundown with me, Martin Cooper, and our brilliant guests, Doughty and Trevor Dwyer-Lynch. Now, a schools minister has said that 7 out of 8 schools are refusing to close despite a 24-hour teachers' strike over funding. But later, official numbers from the government say that 2 in 3 schools remained open despite the action. Members of the National Union of Teachers, or NUT, are staging the strike as part of a long-run dispute with the government over what it describes as the worst funding cuts since the 1970s. So we've just talked about the possibility of more junior doctor strikes. Do we see our teachers now going down the same route?
Definitely. Yeah. And as we've seen today in places like Manchester City Centre and even most cities across England, you've got these massive protests and massive people coming out and saying we don't want these strikes anymore. We can't handle it. We can't handle these increasing classroom sizes. We can't handle this massive curricula or these SATs testings or all of these different things we're being piled on top of us. It's getting too much. Things need to change.
I sense with this a lot more than the junior doctors' strikes. I feel, personally, and I may be wrong, I don't have children, that public support for this isn't as vehement as it is for the junior doctors' strikes. No. I think it puts not only the children through an inconvenience of, they won't see it as an inconvenience, they'll be thrilled, I would be, but they, in the long term for them it is a bit of an inconvenience, but also for the parents, and that has a knock-on effect to industry and business because they're losing staff who have to take time out to look after their children, and it's easy in that situation to kind of go, actually it's inconveniencing us now.
Sure, it's inconvenience them for this one day, but would they rather that people made this effort to inconvenience them for one day, or would they prefer that schools keep getting these funding cuts or keep getting increasing classroom sizes, which ultimately inconveniences everyone in the education that the children are getting?
Yeah. I worked as a teacher assistant for a couple of years, and teachers do work really, really hard. I mean, I do a bit of stand-up and I used to take the mickey out of them, do you know what I mean? But they do, when you're in that scenario and you see how they work and you see how hard they prepare for lessons and they plan and this and that, and then the next day they come in, they can't actually execute what they've planned because of A, B or C scenario. Do you know what I mean? And then it becomes, they're under pressure. So, Ofsted will come in and inspect them, or they get observed, blah, 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 and it's like, let them do the job.
Well, that's it as well. They're not even given the capacity to do the job that they want to do. They're not given the capacity to teach because it's all about getting the kids to memorise things for these tests. Kids aren't learning these things. No. They're just...
It's kind of robotic after a while, isn't it?
How can you pass this test? The first thing you need to do is, first thing kids need to know is, okay, what do I need to pass it? And then that's all they'll try and memorise. They won't actually be learning these things. I couldn't... If I thought back to a lot of the education that I've received, I probably couldn't tell you a lot of what was sort of
the kind of facts and figures,
everything. All I know is I passed these tests, I passed this, I've got this grade, and that's all anyone asks for, because I don't need to prove anything else.
So
if you're doing this to get
that
this
almost
grade,
didactical way of learning, where you're experiencing things and you're going out on school field trips and things like that. That's a dying thing.
Exactly, field trips are cutting out and everything as well. But that sort of thing stops the teachers from actually teaching and just looks at. You could read it from a book, and that's why government are saying we'll just get anyone without any training in to do the teaching for them.
And they don't really get the chance to budget themselves. Then they know, the head teachers, the deputy head teachers in these schools, they know where their money needs to be spent, but they're not getting the chance to budget their own schools. Academies are. That makes academies more attractive to parents, doesn't it?
I guess sure. when they've got this more funding, then they definitely have these. It definitely seems more attractive, but I think when you've got all these extra legislations on academies on top of that, while it may seem attractive to parents, if you actually look into it, it's not nearly as good as it seems on the outside.
Do you have any worries on the surface about subjects like the arts, food technology, IT technology and stuff like that, where because they're going to be the first ones cut out, let's face it, you've got to have your core subjects, English, maths, sciences, languages.
But I think also, when we were at school as well, you got life skills, and I think that's been put on the back burner now. Kids don't really learn about life skills. What happens when they leave school, of this balloon that they're in, do you know what I mean? And preparing for the outside world. And that's the basic things of even just having to communicate with someone, interpersonal skills, interactional skills. That can be put to the by and by, because like you said, it's just robotic, learn this, learn that. And all they're interested in stats. Well, this is going to be a good school because it got 75% of blah, 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 blah. But what the kids are like, can they boil an egg when they go outside?
And you can see why they would cut the arts first, because the arts can't really give you those sort of stats, can they? You could learn a bit of art history, you could learn some music, but you haven't got the stats to back it up. My wife is actually a music teacher, the wife who very kindly messaged in earlier. She's
Your wife and maid.
Yeah, exactly.
Ex-wife.
That's right. She gave me this. She said she's been asked to occasionally team teach on occasion, which is basically where you go into a classroom and you share the teaching and your class split the workload. And she's a music teacher, being asked to go into classrooms where it's where she can't
exactly.
She doesn't know the
teach these
subject.
things. And that's think of that, but on a grander scale, where teachers go on strike and government think, you know what, actually, let's get some other guys, someone who's on training, let's get them in. They'll read from the book, they'll teach the kids, and kids aren't being taught these things.
Yeah, there's so many teachers that are dropping out now, and that's why they're pushing as a TA.
Yeah.
If I was asked lots of times to do PGCE, do you know what I mean? It's like, no thanks.
Yeah.
But the question's got to be asked, why are teachers leaving? That is the question, why are they leaving? What can we do to rectify this? Because there's some great teachers out there, but after so many years, or even a few years, 2 years, you just go, you know what, this is not what I signed up for, this is not what it's about, I can't teach.
We should really be fighting to keep that kind of talent in our schools, shouldn't we?
Absolutely. I think anyone who doesn't really, who thinks that it's an inconvenience, I'd really urge them to actually look into what these teachers are arguing for and what they're asking for, because I think it's so much more than just they're not just babysitting kids here. They are deciding how your kids are going to grow up through life and what knowledge they're going to grow up with.
And I guess generationally as well, if we don't teach this generation, who's going to teach the next?
Exactly.
We're going to leave that there for now. We're going to move on to a story slightly less savoury about sexually transmitted infections. Now, there's been a big rise in diagnoses of syphilis and gonorrhea in England. The sharp rise in the number of people contracting STIs has understandably alarmed sexual health campaigners. Figures published by Public Health England have suggested cases of syphilis have jumped by 76% between 2012 and 2015, 3 years, while cases of gonorrhea rose by over 50%. The data prompted renewed calls for people with new or casual sexual partners to have regular STI tests. The officials also urged them to help reverse the high levels of condomless sex. So, what's our first presumptive thought on this that's causing this sharp spike in new STI transmissions? Is it people having more sex, people are just not safe anymore, or what?
I'm not an expert, but I think the main cause of these STIs is probably sex itself. If I was just going to make a guess out there, it's probably something to do with sex.
Okay, but describe sex. What do you call sex?
Well, sex, you've got these two people, right? Okay. And they love each other a lot, presumably, you'd hope. And then
that's not always true. Go on.
Not always true, but hopefully they like each other a little bit, and then they go under the covers like in The Sims, and if things just move around a lot and love hearts come in the air, and then that's sex. I think that's what I was taught in school by teachers. I'm not sure if they were fully on board with that, but
do you know what, that can be sex?
Yeah, that can be sex.
And we could be talking about oral sex. We could be talking about vaginal, any kind of penetrative sex. We could be talking about non-penetrative sex. There's all kinds of different kinds of sex, but each of them carries a risk, and perhaps people just don't know that if you're not going the full kahuna with it, that you're not entirely safe.
I'm on a different level, so I'm on the conscious, I'm more, telepathic, telekinesis thing,
Oh, okay, so you're kind of
mind,
It's just mind.
It's the eyes.
It's just mind, so I'm obviously going to be okay with that.
All in your imagination.
So, yeah, absolutely. So,
you have Jedi Knight.
Yeah. Well, they want to say, so I'm on a different conscious level in terms of that. So,
that makes it easier to pull about, doesn't it?
I'll say look at someone.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it. I mean, who gets these figures? I don't. Again,
this is from Public Health England. Will run statistical checks, but they'll do them through their clinics across the country.
And what age band, what demographic are they looking at?
Well, they'll be able to break it down into different age groups. I would imagine that will be of the whole age group of everyone that was tested. There has been a rise of this number in those people. Yeah,
it's on a serious note. I think what goes into this sort of rise is that people are less taboo about the idea of sex, and certainly less taboo about the idea of sex with casual partners. More and more people, I gather, are having sex with each other quite openly. Like, you've got things like Tinder, you've got things like Grindr.
Tinder's just gone off.
Swipe right, whoever it is, swipe right.
You've got things like Tinder and Grindr which hook people up almost instantly if they look good enough. And I wouldn't know, unfortunately, but I've got
the wife.
I've got a wife, it's fine. I'm married, it's okay. Turn the channel. But people it's ways to hook up, and I'm not sure if they're, because it's so more casual, because they're so much more carefree about everything, and that's fine to be that, but I think they're less inclined to be protective about that, because it's just a bit of fun, isn't it? Nothing bad's going to happen, it's just a bit of fun. But then it leads to the issues.
And again, which goes back to the previous subject about teaching.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So in schools, you used to have sex lessons, didn't you?
Yeah.
We had sex lessons about this, about precautions, of what can happen, taboo subjects, you know what I mean? You can't get pregnant if you're menstruating, etc., etc., and we know that's wrong, and it's just like, but now, is it ever done?
Yeah.
Because it's more of a giggly thing, like you say, people are open to it, so it's on the phones, people are sending pictures, people are sending texts, everything.
This may come as a huge surprise to you, it may not, but in a former life I was a sexual health advisor.
Really?
Right.
This is what I used to do for a living. Okay. And there's lots and lots of different factors, lots of different reasons, but the main one really, I think, is that the world is just moving very, very quickly at the moment, and our older generations haven't quite grasped how quickly our younger generation is moving. We see cases in places like Northern Europe, in Sweden, for example, where the age of consent has been lowered. The 14 or 15, they can talk to children more about sex, and they know that their children are having sex in a legal way, but they can tell them about it. They make condoms in smaller sizes for younger men that are having sex, and they've got the lowest teenage pregnancy rates in Europe. They've got the lowest STI rates in teenagers in Europe. It's got to be done in line with teaching, obviously, but I think we're just a little British about it.
Well, that's all of what it comes down to. People aren't being talked to about these sort of things. Kids aren't being shown what's going on with the whole sex stuff. Like you're told, this is sex, wear a condom, everything will be fine. But then ultimately it's a bit more than that, isn't it?
Sometimes if you asked 7 out of 10 kids, where would you learn about sex? What did you say? Off the mates?
From their friends. Not my friends, thankfully. I don't think any of my friends have ever done it. We're coming back in about 3 minutes. Don't go too far, will you? We'll be right here.